Apyayantu mamangani vakpranashchakshushrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranam Astva Nirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirate Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this means that having analyzed two superimpositions, which they're both true, and we need to discern the difference between them. One time I was kind of browsing on Facebook, and it happened about 3 months ago. I just ended up on this website, which is kind of where beginners, seekers go, right? They're followers of Ramana Maharishi. A lot of beginners are actually in this, following this man. And there was a statement on there, it was a quote, stating that upon liberation, the whole world must disappear. Everything must just disappear completely. And I thought it's a perfect example to show you what happens when there's no teacher and there's no methodology. It's all just mixed up. And if you're expecting for liberation to produce some different experience, an experiential change, person will go utterly crazy. It will be the most disappointing experience. Ironically, the most disappointing ever, because when you discover that this chair is nothing but the wood, are you having any kind of a thing about that? It's like, yeah, and exactly, what's the big deal? The only thing that's happened is you've got a cognitive shift. And this cognitive shift, it relieves you. It's like, oh, I thought it was a chair and my focus was there, but now I have introduced one more reality about it. And yeah, it was there all along. In other words, that which was there all along never produces an experience. Only that which is here for the first time ever produces an experience. That's why when you win $1 million, just a moment ago, you were not winning that money, therefore there was no experience. Now something new got produced, and the experience has come attached right along with it. But that which was there all along, upon discovery of it, it doesn't produce an experience. Because I knew about it, I just superimposed something else upon it. Because as we said a few moments ago, in order to superimpose one over the other, you have to know about them both. I have to know about the rope and the snake. It's not like the rope is completely concealed by the snake. If it were, if you didn't see the rope, you wouldn't see the snake. In fact, you need to partially see the rope to fully see the snake. And when knowledge of the rope takes place, then the rope is fully seen and the snake is completely gone. So in that same manner, when the nature of this world is seen as no longer as a superimposition, which I thought to be true, when I discover it, that superimposition in Vyavaharika case remains, not like the rope and snake. Rope and snake belongs to Pratibhasika superimposition. There you have a experiential change. That's called Nirupadika. The experience is never again the same. It's different from then on. The perception is different. You have a different connection to the person. You say, oh, I'm so sorry, and you have this genuine transformation in your body and in your entire being. But when you discover that, hey, the world, the chair is just the wood. Oh, okay. Well, actually, the wood is just particles. Now, if you tell this to a child, it will be kind of fascinating, right? Because they never thought about it. But to adults, you may kind of get fascinated. But if you really think about it, it's not a big deal because it was there all along. So it's not producing this big kind of a experience at all because it was there all along. And then you say, well, but actually these atoms are just particles. Okay. And this is a fact. These are facts. And then finally Vedanta comes in and says, well, particles cannot have their being, cannot arrange themselves intelligently without being subject to an intelligent cause. An intelligent cause, because of that, particles intelligently, which are nothing but intelligence, remember? So don't think now when I say particles are arranging themselves intelligently, that implies that particle is one thing, and they're using this intelligence, which is something else, to arrange themselves. If you look into the particle, can you find a particle? No. So where is the particle? Where is the table? Where is the table? Well, it's the wood is there. Where is the wood? When it's atoms. Where is the atoms? When it's quarks. Where is the quarks? When it's just concepts. So all you are ever seeing, all that is happening here is knowledge is taking place, intelligence is taking place, and it's giving you an impression that there are physical objects happening right now. This is how we are accustomed to, because our focus is on forms. So naturally we will say, yeah, forms. And then Vedanta steps in and says, think about it. Just use your analysis logic and analyze, and you will see that it cannot just be independent forms of themselves. It becomes actually a little bit harder now when we create this world artificially and we say, yeah, table. But once upon a time, the reason why the rishis like to contemplate in the forest is because it's natural. It's all natural. Trees are natural. The weather is natural. So it's much easier to be closer to Vyavaharika. Now you're like, a whiteboard, how is this Vyavaharika? Because you're one step away from Vyavaharika the moment you're talking about a man-made object. That's why the rishis contemplate in the forest when you are near and dear to Vyavaharika world, to the clouds, to the trees, to the worms, to the soil. Then it's much easier to think about this. But you don't have to now go running to the forest. Okay? Because the analysis is always going to be the same. You take any object, you reduce it, and you can't find that object. Where is the object? Where is the table, please? The chair. Where's the chair? Well, it's right there, Andre. I know that, but the chair is just a name for the wood. Okay? So, again, when we correct a notion regarding the world, which reduces into concepts, which ultimately resolves into awareness, there is no experiential change. You may kind of be inspired by this, but this is your thing. You may have a personality that that makes you kind of happy about it. But not all people are going to have a personality like that. For some of us, it's like, it's really beautiful now. I can be more reverential about it. But to jump up and down like some crazy face, this is unnatural. Therefore, one can take refuge that, hey, moksha is not some thing that you're, big. In fact, the Buddha here is not smiling like a clown, is he? It's an ordinary face, calm. Because he understands that what is seen is much more than meets the eye. It's an ordinary, down-to-earth thing. I don't have to share it outside the class at all, because you can see how much explaining it takes in the class. Why just confuse someone outside? Don't say, well, why is it like this? Why is it like that? And you're going to be just drowned down. That's why it's a topic that takes place in class. That's how it's always been. It's a guru-shishya parampara. Okay. similarly, when you discover you're much more than this mind and body, again, the mind and body is just concepts. Concepts resolve into awareness. When you discover that, it's sopadika dhyasa. The experience is exactly the same because it was in reference to something that was given to you, not in reference to something that you've created or imagined. In that case, actually, that reminds me, one time I thought about it because there's a lot of talk and belief. It's so ingrained in these schools that when moksha takes place, you're supposed to have a major experience. And I thought about it, why do people think about this? And I guess because the person is living in a pratibhasika bubble. And so when a pratibhasika bubble pops, naturally you will have an experience. So the person like this will naturally think, well, if I pop my bubble, yeah, I will feel different. And they're right. But they don't know about Vyavaharika. They're not in touch with Vyavaharika. Why? Because the pratibhasika is fully functional. Maybe that's one reason. But it's a huge, huge notion. Believe that people cannot let go of. That moksha is some big experience. It may be an experience, but that again is up to you. That's up to your personality. So when we read books about someone had an awakening, that's their thing. It's not universal. That's their personality. Others is like, wow, amazing. Wow. Others like, wow. But he doesn't say anything about knowledge because fact is a fact. How you respond to that fact, that is up to you. But it has not spoiled a fact. Therefore, sopadika dhyasa, when I correct a notion about that which is provided, like the sun is no longer rising and setting, it is the earth that is spinning, I still see and experience the exact same world, the exact same body, the exact same mind, the exact same concerns and worries, the exact same sense of I'm over here and not over there. Nothing changes, just notion takes place that it's actually much more than what seems to be the case. Again, I'm going to keep revising and again because revision is crucial. If I just kind of fly through this, probably won't remember much. So let's revise so far what we've learned. So the verse 1.1 started by asking, is there a presence which makes my mind think, which makes my senses see, which makes my prana work? And the answer was, yes, there is. Because if you look at forms, and this presence is, we said, chit, consciousness. And if you look at forms, they are varying in nature. They're all different. Every movement is different. Every thought is different. Every memory is different. There's not one thing that is common between your mind. In fact, your mind is this environment, by the way. What is mind? This. You see how you're seeing everything now? This experience, how you see the colors, this is mind. So don't think mind, because when we say mind, we imagine mind. We imagine mind, which is a pratibhasika, like, oh yeah, there's a mind in me. This is mind right now. See how many changes are taking place in your mind? Look at this. This is mind right now. All of this. There's a person here in your mind. This is mind. See your body? Your body is in your mind. Don't think your mind's up here. Everything you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, this is mind right now. But look at how many times the mind is changing, and yet I am. In other words, mind is constantly shifting and shaping, changing and evolving and maturing constantly. And yet right now, this is mind. There is something about you that is consistent, same, all the time same right now. And that is your self-evident I am. I exist. I am conscious. I am a conscious being. So in the presence of the conscious being, look at my mind, how many times it's changing. Therefore, what is this presence? It is consciousness, which is common throughout the changes. And everything else that is uncommon is your mind, is the things you hear, you smell, you touch, you think about, you don't think about, remember, analyze, calculate. What's 1 plus 1? Let's do this exercise. 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 6 plus 0.5 times 2 plus 0.5 equals, you see this? Witness. There's a witness looking at that. Look at your mind just going, racing, calculating, wants to make sure it got it. That's mind. And yet throughout that, who's watching that? That is awareness. So that awareness is just watching the mind going 2 plus 3. Yeah, go on. 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6 plus 8 plus 10 plus 6. There is a still awareness underneath all of that. That is Chit. That is the final reality. So again, it's not something that's new. We're not producing anything new. We're just revealing what you knew about all along, but just never thought about it because it was just so common sense, taking it for granted. Who do we take most for granted? Those who are close to us. When they're very far, we call them up, we want to make sure how they're going, you should come over. And then they finally come over, and then we have a relationship with them, and there's a tendency, I'm not saying it happens all the time, there's a tendency to take those who are close to us for granted. Because they're so close to us. The closer something is, the more likely one would take it for granted. Now, what's the closest to you? I am, taken for granted. Upanishad. Upa, that which is the nearest of the nearest, which has no nearer. This is quite far away from you. What's closer to you is your maybe hand up to here. Hand is close. What's even closer? Body. What's even closer than the body? Your thought about what is he going to say next. What's even closer than that? The witnessing presence in whom the mind is going, what will he say next? In other words, whatever is close to you, we take for granted. This is, I guess, human nature, you could say. That's why we take for granted this I am that's always there, always true. So therefore, the teacher brings it out. The Upanishads brings it out. And what is the nature? Knowing that this presence is here, what is the nature of it? We said it is sadharana, it is most common, it is attributeless. And how do we know it's attributeless? How is your consciousness attributeless? Show me, how is your consciousness attributeless?
If we give it an attribute, then it is like an object.
Aha. Okay, and if we give it an attribute, then it's like an object. And what would then happen if it was an object?
It would color every coming object or experience with the first one.
It would color every other object or experience with itself, and that would mean that you could function or not function in this world. Not function. And what would happen if it was an object and it was your intrinsic nature, that means it's your essence, it's something stuck onto you, and you want to meditate and just clear out your mind for a moment. What would happen to that 2 by 2 squared, right? You just said. Would that be in your meditation if that was your intrinsic nature? Yes. Why? Why would that be in your meditation? Yeah? Because you are in meditation, and that you has been, stuck with 2 by 2 square. And what would happen when you die? When your body dies?
That's what you have, the 2 by 2 square meters.
That's when they actually bring the physical 2 by 2, good one.
No, but you think that it is because you are your awareness is not free from objects anymore.
Yeah, good. So, in other words, she made a good point. If you were 2 by 2 square and you die, that will be the end of 2 by 2 square, because it's not universal. Whereas if one person dies, then we look at them, and yet while they were alive, their consciousness was attributeless, illumining their mind, and now the person dies, and that same awareness is looking through my eyes of this body dropping. So this means the body has died, but awareness has not died. And how do you prove that? Well, you're alive. You're still awareing this body. And we already showed that this body, while it was alive, their awareness was attributeless, and your awareness was attributeless. Therefore, it was universal. It was one awareness. So you don't have to die to prove whether you're going to go out of existence. You just watch somebody else die. You get the logic of this? While they were alive, while that body was alive, I am. While this body is alive, I am. My I am has no attributes. Their I am has no attributes. So it's one I am, lighting up Andrei's mind, lighting up somebody else's mind. That body-mind dies. I am still lives, still continues through somebody else, illumining somebody else's mind. No longer illumining that mind, because that mind is not able to receive, that body or mind is not able to, considering they get liberated. If they get liberated, they won't continue as a body-mind. But if they're not liberated, then the same I am is still lighting up the mind. That's called the jiva, the one that travels to a new body. Until one life, you shift your identity from the changing mithya body-mind, the vyavaharika, to that which is attributeless, which doesn't have any punyam or papam, doesn't have any account of merits or demerits, having done good things or bad things. Only the body has that. So when I shift my identity away from who I thought I was, the one who has a lot of things to work out and therefore get reborn, when my identity is moved away from that, then I cannot get reborn, because the body is not me. Therefore, I don't get reborn, because awareness continues. Jealousy and envy can be, a big thing, and it is a big thing for people, because they're like, wow, they're so good, they're a good music player, they're a musician, they're so popular, and I'm just like, a nobody here. But if you understand that it's just concepts manifesting as the musician, as the singer, as the opera theater singer, right? Then you understand how can a wave be jealous of another wave, considering they're both, right, enjoying the same substance. So I can only become jealous and envious if I genuinely see you as a different person from me. So this means that you have, samatvam, a certain equanimity of the mind, because I can now start to enjoy Ishvara's beauty through somebody else. Before, I had to learn it. I had to be that. Now, wow, this is all an expression of one intelligence, which is also manifesting as this person right now. So it's not just an intellectual kind of a thing. It's really helps you so much to enjoy equanimity in life. Then we used a prakriya, a method to demonstrate how awareness is attributeless. And we said that there are all attributes in the world can be put into 3 categories. And for the sake of kind of clarity, we said the first one is sajatiya bheda. Sajatiya bheda is same group of anything absolutely. So 2 animals, 2 rocks, 2 human beings. So take 2 trees, right? Mango tree and oak tree. So there are trees, but there are differences between those trees. And even if you take a mango tree, then every mango tree itself is different. And every fruit that grows on the mango tree is different. Every thumbprint is different. Could you do that? Could you keep on generating? Look at this. So every thumbprint on your 10 fingers are different. Now, could you keep on generating differences like this on and on and on and never have the same thumbprint for 10 times 8 billion right now, which is 80 billion, and that's just in this period, but forever? Not ever generate the exact same thumbprint. It's amazing. Intelligence. So creative. And then when we say, hey, let's draw something that's creative, then we start to look into the world. Let me just draw something. See how you're borrowing the world? That means I'm borrowing Ishvara's creativity, passing it through this instrument on a piece of paper. So who's the ultimate creative genius here? Ishvara. We just borrow. So Sajatiya Bheda, we said that if my awareness is different from yours, then you should be able to define it with an attribute. What attribute would you like to define it? You need to tell me. But whatever attribute you define it as is going to be an attribute of the mind, which won't be there when you've got amnesia. Oh, I'm so certain that my awareness is 2 by 2 squared. And then a person gets amnesia and they totally forgot about 2 by 2 and squared and language. Where's your 2 by 2 squared now? Gone. In other words, they were depending on language to define their awareness. They were depending on the mind. They mixed up awareness with the mind, and they took something out of the mind, and they said, that attribute of the mind is my awareness. Well, where is that attribute during deep sleep? It's gone, because the mind is not there. Where is that attribute during Nirvikalpa Samadhi? It's totally gone, because the mind is not in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Then we had Vijatiya Bheda. What is Vijatiya Bheda, please? 2 groups. Okay, good. Yeah, good. So tree and animal, or animal and human being. So we said that there's only 2 things that fit underneath Vijatiya Bheda. Only. Everything else fits in all 3 categories. Only 2 things exist within just Vijatiya Bheda, which were time and space. And would you like to explain to me why time and space are Vijatiya Bheda? How about just space? That's an easy one. Just space. Why is space in Vijatiya? Remember, Vijatiya means it is unlike something else. Okay, so in other words, why is space in Vijatiya Bheda? Because it is unlike the chair. It is unlike those objects which are in space, which are accommodated by space. Why is space not Sajatiya Bheda? That means same group. Why is space not Sajatiya Bheda?
There's nothing like space, a second space.
Yeah, there's no second space. And what kind of an example could we use of a second space?
Bathroom space, kitchen space.
Ah, good. So bathroom space, kitchen space, dining room space, they're only names in reference to the walls and what we give meaning to, but it doesn't affect the space. And what was the third category? Swagata Beda. And what is Swagata Beda?
Break down it in parts, particles.
Yeah, so you can break it down into parts. So anything in this universe you pick and you break down into parts. Can you break down awareness into parts? How about, I'll ask this, can you break down your mind into parts? Billions of parts. One thought is different from you can have one thought made up of how many parts? Thought of your grandma, how many parts are there? Your nose, her sounds, her dress. Can you put what about thought, what about mind inside Swagata Beda, where you have one thought of yours is compared to another thought of yours. Okay, they're both thoughts, but what distinguishes the thoughts? Different attributes. Now, when it comes to awareness, we said if space is unlike anything, and space accommodates, and space is attributeless, can't you say the same thing about awareness? Because awareness is attributeless. It is that which accommodates all of my thoughts, accommodates the whole universe. Then isn't awareness also Vijatiya Bheda? No, why not?
Awareness is the substratum of every object that there is, so there's no separation.
Okay, good. So if I heard right, awareness is the truth of every object. In other words, it's the substance, the content of every object. And then what term do we use to describe that relationship between objects and awareness? Satya Mithya. So we said that, for example, wood and table seems like two different things initially. But upon analysis, you come to see that the chair or whatever, the table, is just a name for the wood. It doesn't define the wood. It doesn't sort of, influence the wood's essence. The wood essence remains wood no matter what. But wood is able to be put into different forms to which you then have to give name to distinguish it from another form. So the wood is nothing but the substance for the chair. The atom is nothing but the substance of the wood. The quark is the substance of the atom. Concept is the substance of the quark. And therefore also the atom and the wood and the chair. So chair, wood, atom, quark are all names for concept. And concept is manifesting as different forms to which we gave a name to. So all across, from the bottom up, it was nothing but concept. But concept manifesting as a concept to which you give a name to, called quark. Concept manifesting as a concept to which you give a name to, called atom. Concept manifesting as a concept, because there's only concepts. Remember, everything reduces into concepts. Concept manifesting as a concept to which you give a different name called wood. Why so many names for one concept? Because of transactional use. Otherwise, you go to the store and say, "Hey, I want to buy gold for my wife." You want to buy gold for your wife? That's right. I want to buy gold. Do you have gold? We got ornaments. Yeah, but I know that. But they're all made out of gold anyway.
I'll give you a barrel.
Give me a block, and then you buy a block of gold, and you just drop this 2 kilogram on the table in front of your wife, and see how that works out. And she's like, "Oh, what's this? It's gold. It's precious." Totally unhappy. And then you buy her, and you go, it's okay, hold on, let me just go to my garage, I'm just gonna melt the gold, make a little ring out of it, and you put a ring. And now, totally different face. It's the same thing.
I wanted to ask something, André. How do you experience space if you don't have concepts in it, if you don't have objects in it? How could you experience space?
How do you experience, well, we said you experience space through two objects in reference.
If you don't have that anymore.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to get to how space, so I think what you want to ask is how is space a concept?
Yeah.
If there are no objects.
If there is no object to relate.
Yeah, this is yet coming. This is still coming. So this I'm going to cover. Okay, so do you understand this example? So we're not saying, right, gold. Gold is gold, but it's taking a different shape of an ornament. So I work with ornaments. I need ornaments. I need to, right, work with ornaments. I sell and make money through ornaments, but it's all gold. It's all one substance. And depending on what you value, you will buy a ring and not a bangle because that is your thing. So gold is gold all across. The whole world is now gold, imagine. One golden world. But then there is a golden statue of somebody that you may not honor. And right across there, there's a statue of someone that you adore, like a golden Buddha statue. And you have people, golden people showing up here, and they will have certain interests, golden interests, because their thoughts are also made out of gold. And over there you have different kinds of golden people with golden interests, with golden meanings about this golden statue. So they're all just swimming in gold, but the meaning is different. And that meaning expresses as this world of 10 million niches, 10 million interests that you have. Is table unlike the wood? If you say just no or yes, remember Vedanta is usually about yes and no and understanding where both of those places fit. Is table unlike the wood? Suppose you say no. That's right. But why no? Why no? Is table unlike the wood? Is this chair unlike the substance that inheres through and through this entire chair?
The concept chair, there's also a chair possible from another material. Because a chair is more broad as a concept. It's not dependent of the wood.
It's not independent of the wood. So again, good. So I'm going to ask the question, is...
One could say it's in another order of reality.
Different order of reality.
Order of reality.
Someone else wants to say something? So I ask a simple question, is table unlike the wood? Now you could say, yes, it is unlike the wood. Why? Yeah, because in reference to the chair, it is functional. Like I want to go to the store, I'm not going to say, hey, I want to buy a block of wood. Give me a chair. So in that sense, in transactional sense, it is unlike the wood. But on the other sense, I can say, is chair unlike the wood? And you would say, no. And then you would say, what chair? What chair? I only see, like I can just, in one moment, I can cut off the legs. What chair? It was wood all along. And now you say, is wood unlike the atoms that constitute, that make up that wood? Like, what wood? You look under a microscope, I don't see, quote, wood. I see lots of atoms put together. Is atoms unlike quarks? What atoms? There's no such thing as atoms. Only from a certain standpoint, there are atoms. From a different standpoint, there are quarks. Is quarks unlike concepts? What quarks? It's nothing but concepts appearing, taking the shape of quarks. Therefore, is wood and chair Vijatiya Bheda? Can you put this under Vijatiya Bheda? Any one of them? Can you put wood is Vijatiya Bheda to the table or to the chair? Like wood is different from chair? The whole thing is but wood. Therefore, wood is not different from the chair. But at the same time, in reference to name and form, there is an apparent difference. And I need apparent difference to function in this world. Therefore, Advaita never dismisses differences. But it also doesn't dismiss sameness. How does time reduce into concepts? Because we talked about objects so far. So if you look at time, even time itself is something that you can, if you analyze it, see that it's units within units within units. Just like this form is form within form within form within form, time itself is units within units within units. For example, you take 1 hour, and that 1 unit of time can be broken down into smaller units, like 60 minutes, for example. And 1 minute can be broken down into units, like 60 seconds, for example. Now, I know you're going to say, yeah, but that's because they created the seconds and the hour and the minute system. What if they never created it? It doesn't really matter. I'm just giving you an explanation to show you how you can break down time into something that is shorter or longer. But you can't make your awareness shorter or longer. Okay? There's a nice example from Einstein where he talked about relativity of time. And there was an experiment where you have what's called time dilation. And time dilation is when an object is spinning very fast. And if you had a clock attached to that object that's spinning fast, and you could look at that time, like literally just ordinary clock ticking, then from the stationary standpoint, from the standpoint of the stationary observer, if they could see that clock, maybe you can just put a camera and send Wi-Fi signals, right, to the stationary observer, then that clock will be ticking slower. So from their standpoint, the one who's spinning fast, to them that's normal. The clock is ticking. But from your standpoint, the stationary standpoint, that time is different. So it shows you there's 2 kinds of different times. Okay? There was another example where in physics they said if you have 2 twins traveling at light speed, and you can't really travel at light speed, there was some discussions about that, but just below light speed, very close to light speed, then if one of the twins, born in the exact same minute basically, if one of the twins came back after having traveled near light speed, then they would have aged differently. And then in the scriptures, there is what's called Shraddha. Shraddha is an annual event where you give offerings to your ancestors. Because, we need to honor our ancestors. You're here because of your ancestors. You may not have ever met them, but they struggled and didn't have computers and cars. And because of their struggles, you are here now having a good time. So there is this ritual called Shraddha in India, and it is where you offer food and different offerings to your ancestors. And you do this once a year. Now, your ancestors, according to the Vedas, not all of them, are in different worlds. This is not the only world, by the way, according to the Vedas. There are many, many worlds. And they're in Pitraloka. Now, Pitraloka is a different world. It's just slightly above Earth. Not physical, it's a different realm. And your ancestors receive that once a day. You give them food once a year, but your ancestors received that once a day. So the rishis, in this sense, already understood that there is a difference of perception between time depending on what world you're in. Time is still time, but you can perceive time differently. So for your ancestors, they're getting food every single day from their standpoint. From your standpoint, you're going only once a year. So these are, the rishis already understood the relativity of time. It's not something that you need Einstein to show you. So Vedas backs this up with, examples like this. And there's some from Bhagavatam, from different stories that will show you the relativity of time. And then you have space. How is space also made out of concepts? I mean, not only time, right? You have Planck's time, for example, which is a very, 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 very small unit that makes up this unit of time. But space is exactly the same, because between you and me, it seems like there is, suppose, 3 meters. But there's actually infinite points between you and me. Because you can take 3 meters divided by 2, 1.5 divided by 2. How many times can you divide it by 2? Infinite amount of times. So even though there is, quote, 2 meters between us of space, there's actually infinite amount of points between us. So even space itself can be looked at or analyzed, but you can't analyze awareness, because awareness is in whose presence analysis happens. Okay? So even space and time are having their dependence on smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller units. And whatever arises from space and time. When the universe was first formed 13-something billion years ago, first it was hydrogen. One of the first atoms was hydrogen. I think it was hydrogen or helium, one of them. Hydrogen, yeah. And this process then arose from where? Big Bang. Time and space. And from time and space, everything else simultaneously starts to form. So everything arises out of time and space. So if everything intelligent arises out of time and space, then it implies that time and space itself must already arise out of intelligence itself. Because you can't say that time is intelligent. Otherwise, whatever is in time would be intelligent. And you can't say that space is intelligence, because whatever is accommodated by space would be having intelligence. Okay, so far we reduced time, space, and objects into awareness. In fact, we reduce time, space, and objects into concepts. And concept has no reality apart from awareness. It depends on the presence of awareness. You can demonstrate this in your own experience by letting a concept come. For example, right now your mind is blank. And I say, hey, look at this, wait for it, blue duck. The blue duck comes. Concept manifests. And then in a few moments, that concept's going to go away. But it manifests in awareness, and concept resolves back into the conscious being. In that sense, in that respect, concept depends upon, because concept manifests and unmanifests, depends upon consciousness. Okay? And we will see this more in the next section. Now, we also said this consciousness is not given to you as an object, but it's because of which objects are witnessed. It's because of which objects are known all the time, never not known. Even the absence of objects is known in the presence of this one awareness. And how is it known to you? All the time as ordinary, down-to-earth I am. And it can never be an object. You can never grasp it. You can never know it as an object. You can never imagine it as an object. If you imagine awareness as an object, then it becomes vijatiya bheda. Because now it is an imagination unlike everything else in the world. But it depends upon your own private kind of idea of what is awareness. Okay, so it can never be objectified. It can never be experienced. Because to experience something means it wasn't there before and now it is here. And then it, of course, goes back eventually. If you were to call it a quote experience, the closest you can come is say it is my beingness, it is just existence. But that is not really an experience. So when we use the word experience in Vedanta, what we mean most of the time is it's something that is arising in awareness, rather than awareness itself being an experience. Otherwise, it gets very confusing. I've heard many people talk about experience, and it's kind of confusing. Now I'm looking for some experience. Remember, something that is always there, there's no question of suddenly experiencing it, because it was there all along. Your awareness was there all along. So I can't suddenly experience a new kind of awareness. A new kind of awareness means it's produced. Then what was there before it was produced? I was there. And now that it's a new state of consciousness has been produced, who's still there watching that which is produced? I am. And then tomorrow you get sick. Yeah, good luck holding that state of consciousness while you're sick. And then we said, suppose you understand your nature completely. Is there any experiential change? Is there any perceptual change? And we started out by saying that everyone that is born comes with this body attached to them, attached to me. I have a body. I, awareness, have a body. And there is a natural inclination to take that as who you are. Because your parents don't say it to you. Nobody tells you. And even if somebody does, you say, oh, okay, whatever. I'm hungry. And when knowledge takes place and knowledge says to you and lets you, and you understand that this body that's being worn has a dependent reality, is mithya, and this body of yours and your thoughts that you're experiencing ultimately reduce into nothing but concepts, and concept reduces into your awareness. You say, oh, okay. I got through the logic. I understand. Okay. Sopadikatyasa. It's a cognitive understanding, not an experiential change. Experiential change is always in reference to something that is produced for the first time ever, like winning the lotto. Whereas when you discover something that was all along here, it's like, oh, okay, beautiful. But there is certainly a certain freedom about it, which we will speak about in the Bhagavad Gita. There's certainly a certain freedom that comes about knowing that you're not influenced by the fact that your body will die. There's a certain freedom about that, a certain relief.
It can give all kinds of side effects like relaxation, tensions fall away. No? It's not, these are specific experiences, because you only experience yourself and life becomes relaxed.
It becomes very much relaxing and easy and more peaceful, and you make right decisions. You can still enjoy life and go with friends and go to soccer, right? So it's not like, oh, I've found out this reality, now I'm just going to stay as some serious person. In fact, it's totally opposite. You become more goofy, maybe. Maybe not, because not everyone's. It's up to the person. It's up to their personality. In some cultures, there's a certain expectations how the teacher should be and how the students are. And therefore, there's this whole kind of a strong guru-shishya. For me, as a Westerner, I don't have that. For me, I'm just, with everyone. And that's why I love my teacher, because she's exactly like my friend. And that's what I want. I want a friend, not someone that's up there and I'm down here. In fact, the most change that I discovered in my experience is having that relationship with the teacher. That alone gives you so much confidence that, hey, this is another person. This is just a person just like me, and I can relate to them, and that gives so much confidence, and it's so healing to have that. As long as there's this huge up there and I'm here, you have a different kind of thing about that. But I'm not saying it's wrong, because in some cultures it is accepted. That's the way it is. So you have to be genuine to self, right? What is it that you're seeking? What is it that you want? And we said with Nirupadika Atyasa, then the experience is never again the same, because your own personal bubble has been popped. Therefore, liberation is Sopadika Atyasa. That means the experience is exactly the same, but my notion has changed. Why is experience exactly the same? Because I've discovered that the world, which I knew about all along, there's more than meets the eye. It reduces to concepts, and it reduces to ultimately awareness. Sopadika Atyasa. And Nirupadika Atyasa is every time is in reference to your growth, is in reference to your values, in reference to all of the personal development that you go through, which never ends, by the way. So it's not like, oh, look, I know who I am now. I don't have to kind of work on my mind anymore. Naturally, it just continues, because you want to continue living a happy life. You want to continue managing the mind. So ironically, personal development still continues as much as you want. And of course, even the word personal development changes, the definition changes. Before, it was about amplifying, making the ahamkara bigger, but now the whole word personal development changes maturity. It matures in itself. Now it can mean something else. Now it can mean about being a contributor, having more devotion, feeling the presence of Ishvara in all things. So the words themselves change as my understanding evolves.
If you let go your ahamkaras, your own world gets bigger, because you experience less ahamkara, and you see that everything and it's coming, it's directed, it's related to you.
Yes, that's a lovely observation. So what she said is that the bigger the ahamkara is, the smaller the world, because you can never match the world. It's very big. The smaller the ahamkara, the bigger the world, because there's less of me, the individual, which is very small, and more of the world, which is very big. So in other words, only when I have a healthy, not eliminate ahamkara, just have a healthy ahamkara, then I can start to appreciate the world as the interconnectedness of the world. And ultimately, when it's all is said and done, when all of the discussions and the panels and discussing who's right or wrong, if you just ask, end of the day, all of these people, what do they want? I just want to feel connection to something higher, to something bigger. I want to feel connected to myself. Behind all of that mask of knowledge and big words, there's a vulnerable human being who just wants to connect to their nature, to their limitless nature. Okay, so this is why personal stories are so important. To know what are my personal stories that I'm telling myself, and are they keeping with the Vyavaharika? What stories on a daily basis am I telling myself which are making my ahamkara small and kind of denying all things around? What are these personal stories? What patterns come through every day which are recurring in nature, which have a certain tone to them, which are not keeping with the world, which are not keeping with the knowledge? What are those patterns? Do I even know? This is where journaling can become very helpful. Just to have kind of journal on your phone, don't even need a journal, just write down on the phone, hey, I had a conversation and I thought like this, and this is not keeping with what we're learning. This is kind of separating, putting them into a box. That's my pattern. That's my bubble to pop. Okay? Vedanta, a lot of it has to do with popping the bubbles.
So the teacher is a bubble popper.
Yeah, bubble popper. Yes. And how long do you pop bubbles for? Is there like a period? I can now, at 60 years old, I've got enough bubble poppings. How long? When is your break? When do you finally have a break? In a 2x2 square, right? Okay, and I'm just going to close verse 1.2. So we're still at 1.2. And again, the question, suppose you understand the reality accurately, what will happen? And then the verse says, Pretya asmat lokat amrta bhavanti. In other words, the correction of error, that you are bound to your body and mind, that's the error. The correction of that error leads to your freedom. In other words, as long as your eye is placed in your body-mind, if you're brutally honest to yourself, you will find that it's a constant journey of seeking, 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 and that's very tiring. Even if you're highly intellectual, even that becomes fatiguing eventually. And this, when it becomes so fatiguing, then you kind of just want to know the truth. So for this person, they have the correction of error has led to one's genuine sense of freedom. Why? Because you understand that my awareness is lighting up everyone's mind in the universe. It's not just bound to this body, it's literally lighting up your mind, and your awareness is lighting up my mind. That's where we all share one commonality. In fact, we share more than that, because it's just concepts, one intelligence manifesting as millions and millions upon forms. So if I start to think like this and bring the intelligence over and over and over again, your devotion for God just keeps on growing and there's no ending. And your happiness keeps on climbing and climbing and climbing. That's where the joy is, knowing there is one reality which is caring for you, has always taken care of this world and you and all of the lives you've traveled. And it's still taking care of you now. And giving you one more chance to figure out the truth once and for all. And it says, okay, you're in the right class. Good. Furthermore, why else do they experience freedom? Because they have their need to experience awareness has ceased. No more going into meditation trying to experience some big reality. This has gone. Even this is very tiring, to try to experience something that I was all along. I was never apart from that which I sought. I am that now. And there's a great relief and freedom in just stopping all doubts. Not stopping, but all doubts stop. They stop spontaneously. There's not one doubt that comes to the person's mind anymore. Not one, not even 0.00000 10 trillion zeros, 1% of doubts. Even that much doesn't pop in a person's mind in respect to who I am, in respect to what is the nature of the world. And that is a wonderful place to be in. Furthermore, there's no question of manipulating the mind. That too costs a lot of energy, trying to manipulate the mind to feel awareness. In the presence of awareness, there is a mind trying to desperately reach awareness. Who's the knower of that mind trying to reach awareness? Awareness. That's the understanding. And next session, we will speak about verse 1.3. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.